Welcome, everyone. Let's get started. Today, we are exploring a fascinating and contradictory chapter in cybersecurity and national defense, how a leading AI company was blacklisted as a supply chain risk by the US military, only for its most advanced model to be covertly adopted by the NSA. We will uncover the ethics, the technology, and the massive capabilities that forced the government's hand. Let's begin by defining the initial conflict. What exactly happened between Anthropic and the US military? In early 2026, the Department of Defense officially designated Anthropic as a supply chain risk. The basics of this move are staggering. This label effectively blacklisted the company, placing it in the same restricted legal category as Chinese telecom firm Huawei. The DoD moved to force all its vendors to cut off Anthropic completely. But why did this happen? The standoff occurred during intense contract renegotiations. Anthropic refused to yield on its core ethical principles, leading to an absolute impasse. How did it escalate? Anthropic actually took the unprecedented step of launching legal action against the Department of Defense to fight the label. In our deep dive, we see the core of the government's argument. The White House and the DoD firmly stated that the US military would not allow its operations to be governed by the internal ethical constitutions of private tech companies. Let's look at this flowchart to visualize the escalation. It starts with Anthropic providing AI models to the government. During a critical contract renegotiation, the parties hit an ethical impasse. This triggers the DoD to designate Anthropic as a supply chain risk. This branches into two immediate actions. A vendor blacklist is initiated by the military, and Anthropic files a lawsuit in response. Both of these paths converge into a massive national security standoff, pitting private AI ethics against military authority. Moving to slide 2, let's examine the core conflict. What was the actual breaking point? The dispute centered on a single phrase in the software licensing agreement. The basics are that the Department of Defense demanded Anthropic make its models available for, quote, all lawful purposes. Why did Anthropic refuse? CEO Dario Amodei and the leadership team insisted on maintaining strict ethical boundaries. They explicitly demanded that Claude must be walled off from being used in mass domestic surveillance of Americans and from the development of fully autonomous, lethal weapons. How did they enforce this? Through their constitutional AI framework and rigid usage policies. The military outright refused to accept these constraints. For our deep dive, we must note the competitive landscape. While Anthropic held its ethical ground, competitors like OpenAI publicly agreed with the sentiment, but ultimately negotiated their own contracts with the US government, filling the void left by Anthropic's blacklisting. This comparison diagram highlights the fundamental friction. On the top left, the DoD demand is simple, unrestricted use for all lawful purposes. On the bottom left, the Anthropic demand explicitly tries to prohibit autonomous weapons and prohibit mass surveillance. The dashed red lines represent the direct conflict between unrestricted military use and rigid corporate ethics. Meanwhile, on the right, competitors bypass this conflict entirely by simply accepting the government's terms, gaining massive federal contracts in the process. What broke this standoff? The answer is the emergence of Claude Mythos. What is this? Claude Mythos Preview is a new frontier model that fundamentally altered the balance of power. The basics are that Mythos represents an unprecedented step change in autonomous cybersecurity capabilities. Why did it change everything? Because during testing, Mythos autonomously discovered thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities in the world's most critical software, including a 27-year-old critical flaw in the highly secure OpenBSD operating system. How does it do this? It operates as an agentic reasoner. It doesn't just find single bugs, it reads code, understands logic, and chains minor flaws into devastating exploit stacks at machine speed. In our deep dive, we see the gravity of this invention. Anthropic realized this tool was an absolute weapon. They deemed it too dangerous for public release. Instead, they launched Project Glasswing, restricting access to a tightly controlled coalition of top-tier defensive partners to patch the internet before attackers could exploit it. This process flow maps the timeline of the Mythos revelation. Once Claude Mythos is activated, it begins autonomous code scanning. This leads directly to zero-day discovery at scale. Anthropic then performs a critical risk assessment. Recognizing the offensive power, they determine it is too dangerous and public release is cancelled. However, recognizing the immense defensive value, Project Glasswing is formed, resulting in restricted elite access only. This sets the stage for the government's ultimate dilemma. This brings us to the ultimate paradox on slide 4, blacklisted yet adopted. What happened? An explosive Axios scoop revealed that the National Security Agency, the NSA, is actively using Anthropic's Mythos preview model. The basics here are incredibly contradictory. The NSA is using the model despite top officials at the DoD, the agency that oversees the NSA, insisting that Anthropic is a massive supply chain risk. Why did the NSA break ranks? Because the sheer, overwhelming cybersecurity necessity of having access to Mythos outweighed the Pentagon's political and ethical feud. How did this play out? The military broadened its use of Anthropic's tools in the shadows to secure its networks, while simultaneously arguing in open court that using these exact tools threatens national security. For a deep dive, this isn't just an American phenomenon. The UK's intelligence counterparts also secured access through the AI Security Institute. The global reality became clear: allied intelligence agencies simply cannot afford to ignore a tool this powerful. Look at this architectural paradox. At the top, the Department of Defense maintains its public blacklist against Anthropic. The DoD also oversees the NSA. However, moving to the bottom path, the NSA executes a covert adoption of Anthropic's technology. Why? Because the NSA requires critical cyber defense, and only Mythos Preview can provide it at the necessary scale. The practical reality of defending the nation's networks completely bypassed the official bureaucratic embargo. Let's do a deep dive into how the NSA actually utilizes this technology. What is the deployment model? Mythos is used defensively within highly classified, restricted environments. The basics are that organizations with glasswing access, like the NSA, use the model predominantly to scan their own internal, proprietary environments for exploitable security vulnerabilities. Why is this so urgent? They must preemptively find and patch 0 days before adversary nations, who will inevitably develop their own Mythos-class AI, can exploit them. How does the NSA deploy it? Mythos operates effectively as an autonomous security operations center. It ingests millions of lines of classified, closed-source government code, reverse engineers the binaries, and autonomously maps out potential attack paths. Our deep dive reveals that Mythos specifically excels at analyzing complex cross-domain protocols. It identifies microscopic trust gaps and race conditions in critical infrastructure that human auditors mathematically cannot spot. This flowchart maps the NSA's internal workflow with Mythos. Classified government code is continuously fed into the Mythos autonomous scan. At the decision node, if a vulnerability is detected, the AI doesn't just flag it, it generates a working proof of concept exploit. This highly actionable intelligence is handed to the NSA security team for triage. A patch is applied preemptively, neutralizing the threat. The system then loops back into continuous monitoring, creating a machine-speed defensive shield. On slide 6, we look at the code context. What is the technical reality that forced the intelligence community to ignore their own blacklist? The basics are that Mythos doesn't just find standard, simple memory leaks. It understands deep semantic logic and builds complex, multi-step, exploit stacks. Why do existing tools fail? Traditional static and dynamic scanners just look for known bad signatures. They are blind to logic. Mythos actually reasons about the code's intended execution versus its actual execution. Consider a sample code logic flaw, a temporal trust gap. Imagine a smart contract or secure gateway that checks a user's permissions, makes an asynchronous external network call, and only then deducts the access token. Mythos realizes that the pause during the external call leaves the system unlocked, allowing infinite re-entry. In our deep dive, we see Mythos autonomously chaining a minor race condition like this with a KSLR memory bypass and a heap spray to achieve full root access. It does in minutes what takes elite human experts weeks. This sequence diagram illustrates the sophisticated exploit chaining that makes Mythos indispensable. The Mythos agent first identifies a logic race condition in the target system. It then probes the memory layout to discover a KSLR bypass. Next, it executes a JIT heap spray to structure the memory exactly how it needs it. With the memory successfully corrupted, it triggers the original race condition. The target system's defenses collapse entirely, and full root access is granted. This is weaponized reasoning. Let's apply this to a real-time use case, defending national infrastructure. What does this look like in practice? Imagine a scenario where the NSA tasks Mythos with auditing deeply embedded, 20-year-old C code running the gateways for the nation's power grid. During the scan, Mythos discovers a 0-day buffer underflow that allows unauthenticated remote code execution. If an adversary found this, they could shut off the power. What is the mitigation? Because Mythos doesn't just warn about the bug, but actually generates the exact exploit path, the NSA can instantly deploy a precise network filter to block that specific malicious packet structure. The grid is secured in minutes, buying engineers the time needed to write a permanent software patch. This deep dive proves we have entered the machine versus machine warfare model. You absolutely must use frontier AI to find the vulnerabilities in your own infrastructure today, because tomorrow, an adversary's AI will find them. This flowchart maps the preemptive defense strategy. The legacy power grid code is subjected to a Mythos audit. The AI generates a zero-day exploit. From this exploit, defenders identify the exact attack packet structure required to trigger the bug. They immediately deploy a network filter at the perimeter. The green node shows the result. The grid is secured instantly, neutralizing the zero-day while a formal patch is developed offline. Finally, on slide 8, how is this paradox resolved? We must reconcile the tension between corporate AI ethics and the absolute demands of national security. The basics are that following the Axios scoop, high-level emergency meetings occurred between Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Why? Because the government recognized that treating top-tier American AI labs as adversaries is a losing strategy. Collaboration is mandatory for survival. How is it resolved? A nuanced governance model is emerging. Models like Mythos are utilized defensively to protect national security infrastructure, while the government respects the corporate boundaries against weaponizing them for mass domestic surveillance. To conclude, the supply chain risk label was merely a political artifact. Raw AI capability is the new sovereign currency. To master these advanced AI security concepts, understand frontier models, and future-proof your career, I invite learners to like, subscribe, and visit quicktechie.com for premium certification prep, including Q&A banks, full ebooks, audiobooks, full-length training, and interview guides. Our final diagram is a mind map of future AI governance. The root branches into 3 pillars. First, national security, requiring preemptive defense and NSA collaboration. Second, corporate ethics, demanding adherence to constitutional AI and prohibitions on mass surveillance. The third pillar is the synthesis, strategic partnership, realized through initiatives like Project Glasswing and White House summits, ensuring that democratic nations maintain the defensive high ground without sacrificing their core values.
To find related ebook and other material for this training course, go to quicktechie.com. Now you will see all the video courses are available here. So let's move to the ebooks. You can go here, ebooks, all AI related ebooks like you are watching currently Mythos related training. That ebook would be uploaded under this section. You can download this ebook. PDF would be available, all 300-page PDF. So you just click on the download this entire ebook. You can download from this section. So whatever training you are currently listening, corresponding ebook would be available. We have thousands of ebooks available. Now, other than that, we have on video courses which you are watching right now. This also all AI related courses are available. Similarly, for all company related trainings are available, like Microsoft, you can find it here with their respective certification training modules. All exam simulators which would help you to get the certification preparation. Just refresh if you get this kind of error. Okay, so now you can see these are all certification preparation materials. Will also be click here to the NVIDIA certification preparation material. So you can see all NVIDIA certification preparation materials, and click on any of this and it would load the entire screen and you can launch the practice paper. So this is what you can see, that you can submit the answer. We have an audiobooks available. Okay, so for each section, and these are our alumni who can you can find out all alumni who are accessing our portal.